History has a filing system for queens: decorative, tragic, or married off. Women remembered mostly for who they stood next to and what they were wearing when it went wrong. That is the polite version, and it is wrong often enough to be useless. Some of these women signed the orders, chose the method, and outlived every single person who objected. Quick thing before we start: subscribe if you want the version of history that nobody wants carved into a monument. That is the whole pitch. Number 1. Irene of Athens, the empress they had to invent a new title for. It is 780, and Irene is standing in a palace in Constantinople that does not want her there. She is about 28, newly widowed, and technically nothing, regent for a 9-year-old boy in a court where regents have the life expectancy of a houseplant in a war zone. The generals are already meeting without her, and the senior officials have already picked her replacement from among her late husband's brothers. They are wrong about her. Within weeks, she has found the plot, arrested the men behind it, and had all 5 of her husband's brothers ordained as priests, because a priest cannot legally be emperor. That is not a punishment. That is an administrative solution to a family problem. She then spends 10 years running the Eastern Roman Empire, reversing the empire's ban on religious images, and calling a full ecumenical council at Nicaea in 787 to do it, behaving throughout like a woman with no intention of handing anything back. In 790, her son Constantine VI turns 20 and takes the throne properly. She is pushed out. 2 years later, she is back as co-ruler, and this is where the family arrangement stops working. Constantine is not good at this. He mutilates his own uncles after another conspiracy, abandons his wife for a lady-in-waiting, and scandalizes the church, and by 797, he has lost the support of essentially everybody who matters. His mother is not one of the people trying to talk him out of any of it. In August 797, Irene's supporters seize Constantine and blind him. They do it in the Porphyra, the purple chamber of the imperial palace. It is the room he was born in. She had given birth to him in there 26 years earlier, and she chose it deliberately, because in Byzantium, the point of a thing was never just the thing. And here is where it gets really interesting. Theophanes, the chronicler writing closest to these events, records that the sun went dark for 17 days afterward, so completely that ships lost their course at sea. It was almost certainly volcanic ash. Everyone alive at the time read it as God filing a complaint. Constantine either died of the injury or vanished into a monastery. Irene took the throne alone and styled herself Basileus. Emperor, the masculine form, not empress. The first woman to rule the Roman Empire in her own name in the entire 800 years it had existed. And that decision reshaped Europe. In the year 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne in Rome, partly on the argument that the imperial throne was vacant, because the person sitting on it was a woman. Irene's coup is a load-bearing wall in the invention of the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne then tried solving the problem by proposing marriage to her in 802. Her own finance minister overthrew her first, and she died in exile on Lesbos within the year, spinning wool. The Eastern Orthodox Church venerates her as a saint for restoring the icons. Her feast day is the 9th of August, and there is no asterisk next to it, which brings us to Empress Lu of Han China. Number 2, and the one nobody warns you about. It is 194 BC in the capital Chang'an. The founding emperor of the Han dynasty has been dead about a year, and his widow, Lu Ji, is holding the empire together on behalf of a teenage son who is gentle, decent, and completely unsuited to any of it. Somewhere in the same palace complex is a woman called Consort Qi, who spent years as the late emperor's favorite, and spent those years lobbying him to disinherit Lu's son in favor of her own. Lu Ji remembers all of it. She starts with the boy. Consort Qi's son, Liu Ruyi, is around 14. The teenage emperor understands precisely what his mother intends and keeps his half-brother beside him constantly. Eats with him, sleeps in the same room, never leaves him alone. It works for months. Then one morning the emperor goes out hunting early and does not wake him. The poison arrives before he gets back. Then Luji dealt with the mother. Consort Chi was mutilated so comprehensively that the court invented a phrase for what was left of her, and the phrase translates as human swine. I am not walking you through it. What matters is what came next, because the next part was the entire objective. She invited her son to come and look. Emperor Hui was 17 years old. He recognized the woman. According to the record, he said that this was not something a human being could have done, and that he could not possibly govern an empire as her son. He was ill for a year afterward. He then stopped governing altogether, drank heavily, and was dead at 22. Now here is what nobody tells you. Almost everything we know about Luji comes from one man, Sima Qian, writing roughly a century later, and he was not writing a hit piece. In the same book, assessing her 15 years in power, he calls the reign quiet and competent, punishments rare, taxes low, a population recovering from decades of civil war, left in peace, prospering. Both of those things sit in the same book, a few pages apart. It is the equivalent of a performance review listing an atrocity and strong fiscal discipline as separate bullet points and refusing to reconcile them for you. Luji ran China for 15 years, the first woman to do so in everything but title. She installed her relatives in every position that mattered, on the reasonable theory that family is safer. And within 2 months of her death in 180 BC, the Han court and the surviving imperial princes exterminated the entire Lu clan, on the equally reasonable theory that leaving any of them alive would be a mistake. She built the most secure position any woman in Chinese history had ever held, and it lasted exactly as long as her pulse did. Number 3 is Mary I of England, and this one is bleak in a very particular way. It is the winter of 1555, and England is quietly rearranging itself again. Mary has been queen for 18 months. She is 38, devoutly Catholic, and certain that her father and her brother dragged the country into heresy, and that God put her on the throne to drag it back out. In February, the burnings start. She thinks this is going to work. Between February 1555 and November 1558, roughly 284 people were burned in England for heresy. That is not one chronicler's guess. It comes from official records and from John Fox, whose martyrology is obviously partisan but whose names and dates hold up under checking. At the peak it works out to a burning every 4 or 5 days. About a fifth of them were women. One of them was pregnant, and what happened at that execution on Guernsey in 1556 was so far outside acceptable even by the standards of the day that it was formally investigated afterward. The most famous of them was Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had annulled her parents' marriage and made her illegitimate. Under enormous pressure, Cranmer recanted his Protestantism 6 separate times in writing. He was going to be burned regardless. So at the final service, handed the chance to read his recantation aloud in front of the whole church, he repudiated every word of it and said the hand that signed those papers would burn first. And here's the thing, it did not work, not even slightly. Fox's book was in every parish church in England within a generation, and it did more to make the country permanently anti-Catholic than any law her sister ever passed. Mary burned people in order to end a religion, and instead she supplied that religion with the founding story it still tells about itself. That is like trying to kill a rumor by taking out full-page ads, denying it. Meanwhile, her personal life was quietly falling apart. She believed she was pregnant twice. In 1554, the court prepared a nursery and wrote the letters announcing a prince in advance, with a blank space left for the date. Bells rang in London on a false rumor. Nothing came. It happened all over again in 1557. Doctors now think it was probably a tumor, quite possibly the thing that killed her. She died in November 1558, aged 42. Her sister Elizabeth took the throne, reversed every religious law she had passed, and reigned for 45 years. They are buried in the same vault in Westminster Abbey. Elizabeth is the one with the monument on top. The inscription calls them partners in throne and in grave, sisters, sleeping there in hope of resurrection. It was put there by a later king who wanted the family to look tidy, Ranavalona I of Madagascar. Number 4. The woman who ran a legal system with no judges in it. It is the 1830s in Antananarivo, and a man is kneeling in a courtyard because somebody has accused him of something. Witchcraft, maybe. Christianity, disloyalty. It does not especially matter which one. He is handed 3 small pieces of chicken skin and then a cup containing a preparation of the tangina nut, which is a poison. The poison is the trial. If he brings up all 3 pieces of skin, he is innocent and walks out. If he brings up 2 or 1 or none, he is guilty, and often the sentencing has already been settled by the poison itself. Roughly 1 in 5 people who took the ordeal died from it. By the 1830s, on some estimates, around 3,000 people a year were going through it. And because an accusation alone was enough to trigger the whole process, the ordeal quietly became the most efficient method in the kingdom for removing a neighbor you disliked. The really wild part is what she was doing with the other hand. In 1831, a French sailor called Jean Laborde shipwrecked on the coast and was brought to her court. Ranavalona put him to work, and Laborde built her an industrial complex at Mantassoa producing muskets, cannon, gunpowder, glass, bricks, soap, cement, and lightning rods in Madagascar in the 1830s. With no European partners because she had thrown the Europeans out, she ran a domestic arms industry and a poison oracle simultaneously, and saw no contradiction because from where she stood there was not one. Both were tools for keeping outsiders off her island. She banned Christianity in 1835. Converts who kept practicing were executed, some of them thrown from the cliff face below the palace at Ampamariñana, which is a memorial site today. Now, about the numbers. You will see a claim that the population of the Marina heartland collapsed from $750,000 to 130,000 in 6 years under her. That figure comes from a hostile European source with an obvious interest in building the case for intervention, and modern historians treat it as unreliable. The deaths were real and enormous. The arithmetic is propaganda. Both can be true at once. She died in 1861 after 33 years in power, having kept Madagascar independent longer than almost anybody in the region. Her son took over, opened the country to European advisors, and 35 years later, the French annexed the whole thing. In Madagascar today, her reputation is actively argued over. Tyrant, or the last ruler who kept the French standing outside. The uncomfortable part is that the second one is also true. Number 5. Fredegund of Neustria, the only person on this list who got precisely what she wanted and then died warm. It is 568, and a Visigothic princess called Galswintha has been in Rouen a matter of months. She married Chilperic, king of the Frankish kingdom of Neustria, and brought an enormous dowry with her. She has already worked out that her husband never gave up the servant girl he was involved with before the wedding. She asks to go home. She offers to leave the dowry behind. She is found strangled in her bed. Chilperic mourns for a few days and then marries the servant girl. Her name is Fredegund. The sister of the woman she replaced is Brunhilda, queen of the neighboring Frankish kingdom. What follows is a 40-year blood feud between 2 women that consumes 2 royal families. Almost everything we know about it comes from Gregory of Tours, a bishop who was alive at the time, who knew both of them, and who loathed Fredegund specifically. Keep that in mind. The events are corroborated elsewhere. The adjectives are his. In 575, Brunhilda's husband Sigibert has effectively already won the war. He is being raised up on a shield by his own troops in the field at Vitry, which is how the Franks crowned a king, when two servants approach him carrying knives that have been treated with poison. He dies there. Gregory says the servants came from Fredegund. Her husband's kingdom, which was about one afternoon away from ceasing to exist, survives instead. But it got weirder. Over the next decade, Fredegund's stepson Merovesh dies in circumstances nobody has ever satisfactorily explained. Her other stepson Clovis is arrested, stabbed, and buried in a hurry, and his mother and sister do not outlive him by long. Bishop Praetextatus, who had annoyed her, is stabbed at the altar of his own cathedral during the Easter service in 586, and Gregory records that Fredegund turned up at the dying man's bedside afterward to offer him the use of her personal physicians. The bishop declined. She even tried it on her own daughter. Gregory says Rigunth was going through a treasure chest with her mother when Fredegund dropped the lid onto her neck and leaned on it, until servants heard the girl and came running. Rigunth survived. Nobody was punished, because by that point there was nobody left with the standing to punish anybody. Fredegund died in 597, in Paris, in bed, of nothing in particular, aged somewhere around 50. Her son, Clothar II, was 13. In 613, that son captured Brunhilde. She was about 70. He had her paraded in front of the army for 3 days and then tied to a horse and killed. Clothar then reunited the entire Frankish realm under himself, and every Merovingian king who followed descends from Fredegund. You can go and look at her tomb. Her effigy is at Saint-Denis, just outside Paris. A mosaic figure, hands folded, perfectly calm. She is the only woman on this list whose plan worked all the way to the end, and she is lying underneath a picture of herself, being serene about it. So, there you have it. 5 queens who were handed a temporary job and made other arrangements. Irene of Athens blinded an emperor in the room where she gave birth to him, and has a feast day for it. Empress Lu invited her teenage son to come and see her work, and he never recovered from what he saw. Mary I burned 284 people to end a religion, and instead handed that religion the story it still tells about itself. Ranavalona ran a court, where the poison was the judge and the arms factory was the whole point. And Fredegund started a 40-year war, won it 16 years after her own death, and died of nothing at all in a warm bed in Paris. Here is the part I keep coming back to. Every one of these women was handed a role that was supposed to be temporary. Widow, regent, placeholder. Somebody's second choice, keeping a seat warm between 2 men who mattered more. The chroniclers all wrote them down as an interruption. Every single one of them read that as an opening.